pregnant. Huh? 10 years they wait. Another 10 years they wait. Now people have asked this question, why? Because we're going to repeat this again later on with Rachel. The next week we're going to talk about Rachel and her problems. She also can't give birth. What is the story? And even the prophet, one of the great prophets, Samuel, also came through this whole idea of not being able to get. The answer is that God seems to love the prayers of the righteous. So if you get pregnant very easily, it's one thing. But if you don't, then then you start praying. So it seems that God loves the idea of these righteous people praying to him and beseeching him. Finally, guess what happens? She gets pregnant. Mazel tov, and a wonderful day it is. She's pregnant and she goes through hell. Pardon the expression. I mean, it is murder. She's having the time of her life now. I'll be honest with you, I've never been pregnant. I want to be honest with you. I haven't been pregnant, but I've gone through 6 pregnancies with my wife. Okay? And I can tell you, it's not comfortable. I'll tell you a little, I'll be honest with you. Tell you a little story that the first time that my wife, I think I mentioned this before, probably a million times, that when my first daughter was born, Chayaleya, I was able to go into the room and they put a fetal monitor on her, and the monitor is measuring the intensity of the contractions. And I'm going, ooh, honey, a big one is coming up, And she tells me, shut up! Okay? I feel it! Now a big one is coming up, a hero. I'm telling her. Anyways, it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant. Some have an easier time. Rivka had a horrible time. Now she knew, because this is a biblical story, that there's got to be something to this. Why is she having such a horrible time? And she felt that inside of her, there's actually 2 entities that are doing battling with her. Why? So she goes to the prophet of the day, and when I say prophet, I don't mean prophet like in corporations, prophets. I'm talking about holy people of the day, and the prophet tells her, listen, I want to tell you something. You are a very special woman, and inside of you, there's a destiny of 2 nations. Wow! 2 nations. One is going to go one way, the other one's going to go the other way, and there's going to be a little bit of contention between them. One is going to rise, the other's going to fall, the other one's going to fall, the other one's going to rise. But that's why you're having these issues. It's good news, bad news, right? I mean, it's good news that she finally figures out why, but then there's things that she's going to have these 2 children that are going to contend. Anyways, they're born. Twins. The first one comes out and the Torah immediately gives him, already abuses him. Why? He says he comes out all hairy. He's born with a hoary mantle, it says. I don't even know what a hoary mantle is, but it probably needs a shave. Okay? He's all red and he has hair all over him, and they call him Esav. Fine. His brother comes out and he grabs onto his leg. Okay? And his father says, well, how come he grabbing onto his leg? Because he wants to be the first to be born, but his brother beat him to it. He calls him Yaakov. This is Yaakov. This is going to be Jacob. And Yaakov comes from the word Akev, which means heel, because he held on to his brother's heel. So these 2 brothers, you have one Esav and you have one Yaakov. Let me see if there's any hope here for my phone.
Are you able to get me a copy?
Come on.
Do that?
Yeah. What do you want?
Okay.
Maybe we should have grabbed the heel.
We should have grabbed the heel. And these 2 brothers grow up. Now, if there would be no story if both of them are the same, right? If both are the same, and then each one goes on a different path, then okay, there's no real story. But they're complete opposites. Esav turns out to be a hunter. He goes out there and he's an expert hunter and a great chef and a great cook. Jacob is a stay-at-home son. He stays home, takes care of whatever goes on in the tent. Yosef Island, he's calmer, but mother's boy, like hangs out with his mom. They hang out together. Esav is, he's out there hunting and doing all of those manly things. And here's the interesting part. where the Torah says that Rebecca, she loved Jacob because he was a perfect son. He did everything, brushed his teeth, combed his hair, did his homework, never gave her any trouble, never hung out at night, didn't run with the rough crowd. He was just a perfect son. Esau, his father loved him. It says Isaac loved Esau. And Isaac loved Esau because he was this guy who was out there and he brought his father delicious meals. Now, here's where we have to ask a question. The Torah is very biased. It doesn't give these two an equal footing. It's always going to be biased towards whom? Jacob. Why? Because that's who we are. Jacob produces the Jews. We're Jewish. So the Torah is biased towards our grandfather. Esau doesn't get a fair shake. It turns Esau into, like I mentioned a number of times, the ultimate enemy. Meaning that not only is he a wild man, but he's also a murderer, he's also this, he's also that, but, and here's the worst part, he plays the game at home as if he's religious. So his father thinks of him, oh, he's a nice guy. He asks his father all these important questions about Judaism. So his father thinks that, hey, Esau, is a great guy. And his father loves him. Now you think to yourself, how could Isaac, Isaac who is like one of these paragons of virtue. I mean, he went up to the mountain, he allowed himself to be brought on the altar. He never leaves the land of Israel because he's a very holy guy, and this is Abraham's son. How is it possible that Isaac should kind of steer himself towards Esau? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I get that Rebecca loves Jacob because Jacob is going to be the guy who's going to keep the tradition going. The covenant is very important over here. Remember, Abraham started it. He made this covenant with the Almighty. Then he passed it on to Isaac. And now Isaac is supposed to pass it on to someone. And Esau doesn't care about this. Esau is not interested in this covenant, about this relationship with God. So how is it possible that Isaac should fall prey? The answer is the following. Isaac was a little different than Abraham. Abraham, we talked about chesed. Abraham was a person that gave to everybody whatever they needed. Doesn't matter who you are, what you are. He displayed kindness to everybody. Isaac was not like that. Isaac was much more discerning. I mean, he looked at you and he saw within you some goodness. He was going to spend the time to bring that out of you. Abraham was going to give you, no matter where you are, whatever station in life you were, Abraham was going to support you, no matter what. Isaac was a well digger. He dug wells. Now, in the spiritual term of digging wells, what does that mean? That means that deep down, there's water. But how do you get to the water? You can't talk to it. You can't stand there and say, oh, please come up. No. What do you got to do? You got to dig, and you got to dig, and you got to dig, and it's hard work because a well is not 3 feet down. Sometimes be 15 feet down, and you got to keep digging and not giving up. Keep digging, keep going. You're going to make it. That's Isaac. Isaac saw potential in people, and he worked hard at bringing out that potential. He knew all about Esau. He knew who Esau was. He didn't fool him, but he saw something, a spark, that one little spark in Esau that he as a father didn't want to give up on him. The mother, okay, Esau is her son, and she fed him, and fine, no problem. But it was Jacob that she knew. Jacob is going to be the one that's going to carry on the covenant. Isaac didn't want to give up on Esau, and that's why he put his effort into him. It's a tremendous lesson to us in life, because we are easy to write people off. We write people off. You're a teacher in school. There's a guy who doesn't do good in a class. You label him dummy. Right away, you label him dummy. Maybe there's a spark in there that needs to be ignited, and then, because everybody's different. You have children. Many of us, have children. No two children are the same. There are some children that will come home like Jacob. Look, they'll come home, they'll do their homework, you'll get the A's, you'll come to the PTA meetings, they're going to say, it's a pleasure to have her in the class. What a pleasure to have her in the class. Then you're going to have kids. Did you do your homework? Did you do your homework? Did you do your homework? Nah. The teacher? She could do much better. Jay, do you want to give me this? Perfect. Thank you, Jay. Jay is a real, he's a gentleman. Okay? So no two kids. A good teacher is not going to give up on anybody. A good teacher will be able to discern that there is a spark in the student, and you know what? I'm going to work at it. Is it going to be easy? No, because the student is going to fight back. It's going to fight back. But if you take the time, and if you're truly a good teacher, guess what happens? Those are the students that you're most proud of. If you have Albert Einstein in your class and you teach him physics, guess what? Well, I'm going to give you a yasher koyach. I'm going to give you a high five. Why? You're teaching Albert Einstein physics. Okay? Now, for example, what's our favorite Ashkenazi philosopher? Maimonides, right? Maimonides. Okay, Sarah gives me that look. I used to be Jack, but now Sarah's taken over the bad look. I meant Svardik. Okay? Now, you have Rambam in your class, and you taught him a piece of the Talmud, and he knows it. No, what am I going to give you the teacher of the year award? Of course, he's supposed to know it. This is the Rambam. Wait, that's or something. Take Perelmuter. Then we'll see if you're a teacher or not. That's going to be the discerning part. And that was Isaac. Isaac saw in Esau a spark of goodness that if he could, at the end of the day, elevate that, but it takes a tremendous amount of work because his initial abilities are about hunting. He wants to be out there and he wants to do whatever he wants. He doesn't want anybody to tell him what to do. That's why Isaac geared towards him and Rebekah geared towards Jacob. Now these two brothers are forever going to be clashing with each other because they represent two types of two worlds. Jacob represents the world as far as we look at him, the world of Ihel, the world of a tent, a Torah studier, a guy, etc., doing all the good work, being loyal to the Almighty, doing what's right. Esau represents exactly the opposite, going into the world and doing what he wants to do. So we have two episodes that we need to discuss. One is, way back in biblical times, the firstborn held sway. Because the firstborn was the one that was going to be the one that was naturally going to take over and become the head of the family. Even in inheritance, in Judaism, the firstborn gets a double portion. So if you have 3 children, you split the estate into 4, and the firstborn gets half, and the other 2 children split the other half. Because the firstborn is supposed to be the one that's going to be instead of the dad. The firstborn was, and there's a lot of responsibility, but there's also a lot of goodies that come with being the firstborn. Who's the firstborn here? Esau. He doesn't care about it. Doesn't care. Jacob wanted to be the firstborn so badly because he knew all of the benefits and all of the things that come with the firstborn. The blessings come with the firstborn. Everything comes with the firstborn. So one day, Esau is out there and he's hunting and he's doing whatever he does that day. Stealing, hunting, whatever. Because I told you the Torah doesn't have any mild-mannered villains. You don't have guys that, like counterfeit money. Nay. We have murderers, gangsters, that real hardcore, and the more the better, the harder the better. So Esau is like hardcore, and he's a robber and this and that. And one day he comes home and he's exhausted. He is just exhausted, and he and his brother is cooking a soup, porridge, whatever it was, a lentil soup. Okay, lentil soup. And I'll tell you why in a lentil soup in a moment. There's a reason why it was a lentil soup. And Esau comes in and he says, give me some of that soup. So Jacob says to him, okay, I'll give you some soup if you give me the birthright. You'll give me the firstborn rights. So Esau says to him, what the hell? What do I need the firstborn rights? I'm going to die here of hunger and of thirst. So Jacob says, okay, let's make a deal. Here's some soup. I get the first. He says, take it. I don't care about it. Who cares? So Jacob buys the birthright that day, and he gives Esau the porridge or the soup or whatever it is, and they split. Okay. Now, why a lentil soup? Have you ever seen a lentil, a bean? Yeah. A bean looks like it's round. The Talmud tells us Abraham died that day, and Isaac was sitting Shiva. Now, when we have a tradition that the first meal after Shiva is what? An egg. Why? Why an egg? The egg represents the cycle of life. It has no beginning and no end. right? It's round and oval, has no beginning. And that's why you hit the egg is first, to tell the mourners it's the cycle of life. Look, a new generation comes in, the old generation goes out. A new generation comes in, and that's the cycle of life. That's the way it is. So there's no reason to be sad because your dad lived to 107. You know, great. Lentil was there before the egg. Lentil is the same thing. He made Isaac, his father, a lentil soup because a lentil looks like an egg, and it's the cycle of life. But Esau didn't care about this. He just wanted the soup, so he ate the soup. And Jacob. Now, I want to show you how biased they are towards Esau. So I'm going to read to you from a verse. That this is the story. So that day he sold him the birthright, and this is from chapter number 25, verse number 33. Yaakov said, Yishava li kayom, swear to me today. Vayishava loy, and he swore to him. Vayimkres b'charosi liYaakov, and he sold his birthright to Jacob. Now, I'm a little kid, and I'm in yeshiva, I'm in a day school, and we're learning this. This probably you'll learn maybe in third grade, let's say we're learning third grade. How old are you in third grade? 8, maybe, 8 or 9, 8 years old. And I could still remember this. The next verse goes like this. And then I'm going to tell you how my teacher interpreted it. The Yaakov nasan la'Esav lechem. So Jacob gave to Esau bread, the zira doshim, and the lentil stew. Vayochel he ate, vayesh, and he drank, vayokem he got up, vayelech, and he left. Vayivas Esav es abchayra, and Esau spurned the birthright. Okay? Anything wrong with what Esau did? Esau says he ate, he drank, he got up, and he left, and he spurned the birthright. So we're 8-year-olds sitting in yeshiva. Imagine us, we're little kids, yarmulkes, we're all sitting there listening I hope we were listening intently to the rabbi, and says, see what Esau was? I'll show you. Vayochal, and he ate without making a blessing. Vayesh, and he drank without making a blessing. Vayokom, he got up without saying grace after meal. He didn't bench Esau. Okay, putting the fear. And Vayelech, he walked out of the room without kissing the mezuzah. That was Esau. Okay? Does it say that in the Torah? No. But that's how our teacher brainwashed us. Right? They brainwashed us. So before you eat, don't be an Esau. Make the blessing. Do the grace after meals. When you walk in a room, kiss the mezuzah. Because if you don't, who are you like? Do you want to be like Esau? No, we don't want to be. Are you kidding? That would be the worst. You're kidding? So how many years later? 60 years later, I'm already shivering. I'm already shivering thinking of my teacher sitting across the room. Jack.
Well, how many versions are there of this birthright?
Why?
I always learned that Isaac was getting blind and he was getting near death.
Right,
and
right.
His wife brought Jacob in and didn't recognize him, but felt the hair on his chest and thought it was Esau.
Oh, wait. We're getting to that story. Oh, that's the clincher. That's the clincher of the story. But right now they're fighting for the birthright. Okay? So Isaac doesn't know this. Right? This is done privately between Jacob and Esau. So Isaac doesn't know of this whole episode, that he knows that Esau is the firstborn, Jacob is the secondborn. That he knows. Okay. Comes along now, it says, like Jack had mentioned, the Torah tells us that Isaac became blind at the end of his life. Becomes blind. He has to now start making arrangements for the next generation. What's going to happen? Now, besides all of the monetary stuff that the patriarchs had, which they had, like gold and silver, and they were wealthy, whatever it was, and maidservants and cattle, whatever, they also had, Abraham got it from God, Abraham gave it to Isaac, and that was the power of blessing, meaning that I'm going to give you a gift that no one else in the world is going to have, and that's going to be the power to bless. Meaning, I have the power, and you're going to get it, and because I'm giving this to you, I want you to commit to me that you're going to continue on the way I've lived my life, being loyal to the covenant. Now, Jacob was unnatural, but since Isaac wanted to save Esau, he calls Esau in, and he tells him, listen, my son, I love your meal, and I want you to go out there into the world, I'd like you to hunt for me and make me a delicious dish. And when you come back, I'm going to bless you. Okay, fair enough, right? Esav is the firstborn. He's going to get the blessing. Everyone's going to be happy. Rebecca hears this. And she says, oh, no. Like Jack had mentioned, no, this is not going to happen. She calls Jacob and she says to Jacob, Esav is going to take the blessings. You know what Esav is? How is Esav going to keep the covenant? There's no way Esav is going to keep the covenant. You need to go in there and you need to bring the food to your dad, and then you're going to get the blessings from your dad.
Good luck.
Rabbi,
Let's see, yes.
I'm video recording, but if you want to move that tripod, I'll
Oh,
send it to you.
something's wrong with you. Something went bad. Okay.
No, there we go.
Okay, so now, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. So now, Rebecca says this to Jacob. Jacob says, well, you kidding me? How am I going to get in there? I mean, you see Esav. Esav has a beard, he's hairy, he's all over the place. I'm going to walk in there and my father's going to touch me. And not only is he not going to bless me, he's going to curse me. He's going to curse me. So she says to him, listen, I know your dad, and the curse will come on me if he curses you. But you listen to what I'm telling you. And she says, okay. He says, reluctantly, he agrees to it. He agrees to it. So she prepares a dish that she knows that Isaac is going to love. And she puts him on. She has some clothing from Esav in her home. She puts him on his clothing. Plus, she takes the skin of the goat and she puts it on him on his chest and on his arms and on his neck. And she sends him in there. He comes in. Isaac says, what? How come so quick today? Like usually it takes a little. He says, oh, because God. Great Isaac is already wondering, what do you mean God? Esav never mentions God. But Jacob, of course, was the one. Since he's our hero, he's always mentioning God. So he says, God prepared for me today. I should find it quickly. So Isaac says, something fishy here. There's something fishy here going on. Okay, what's going on? So he says, are you Esav? He says, of course I am, and Esav is your son. He says, I am Esav your son, but you could read it a number of different ways. You could read it to say, I am Esav your son, which is, I am Esav your son. Or you could read it, I am, Esav your son. Esav is your son. Okay, that's a way that we like to justify, because Jacob is not going to steal the blessings, but we're going to put the comma in there just to say, I am, Esav is your son. Fine. Okay, he says, you know what? I'm still not certain. Come closer. He comes closer and starts to, he's a hairy guy, yeah, looks hairy. And he makes that famous statement, Hakol kol Yaakov vayadai midei Esav. The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esav. That has been, that parenthetically has been like a mantra in the Jewish world for thousands of years, that we're not violent people, right? Esav, he's the violent. Why? Hakol kol Yaakov. The voice of reason has always been part of the Jewish way, but Yadayim and violence, that's the domain of Esav. So any nation that's violent belongs to Esav, but if you're not violent, if you just want to talk it out, you want to negotiate, that's why we are the greatest debaters and kvetchers, because Akoil Kol Yankov, our voices are the voice of Jacob, but fighting. So, and you can imagine when we were growing up, anytime we had a tussle, what would the teacher say to us? Hakoil Kol Yaakov, but Ayadayim. You hit a guy, you punched a guy, you hurt a guy, you day Esav. That's why they loved when we played football, because football is all about Esav, right? What's the purpose of football? When the other guy has the ball, what are you supposed to do to him?
Tackle.
There you go. Can you talk to him? No. So football to them was an Esav sport. Fed. That's not a Jewish sport. What's a Jewish sport? Chess. That's a Jewish sport, okay? Because you move the pieces, you don't fight, fine, okay. So that's it. So what happens? Jacob, he sees Jacob, he feels him, but still, he cuts him come a little closer, and he smells him, and he says, you know what, they smell good, and he blesses him. Gives him the blessings. Now we're going to go through the blessings just in a moment. Jacob leaves. like I'm sure that with a big sigh of relief that his father did not find out the truth. 2 minutes later, guess what happens? As Jacob is exiting, Esau is entering. And he says, here, Dad, your food is ready. And all of a sudden, Isaac feels this tremendous terror coming over him. He's terribly afraid. And he goes, my God, whatever happened? Who was the guy that came in there and got the blessings? Gam Baruch Yeh, he should remain blessed. He says, who are you? He says, well, what do you mean, who am I? I'm your son Esau, and and I brought you the food. And he goes, ay vezmir, ay. Someone else came in here, but who else could have been it? It was Jacob. Jacob came in here and took the blessings. And Esau now is, as much as he wasn't a religious guy, and as much as he didn't care about, whatever the covenant or keeping on the tradition, one thing he did care about, and that was his father, and he wanted his father's blessing. Now who could blame him? Could you blame him? And he begins to cry. He begins to wail and to cry. And he says to his dad, come on, Dad, you only have one blessing. And Isaac says, what should I do? I gave it to him already. He says, come on, you've got to have another blessings. And he blesses him, and he says, you know what? When your brother will go down, you'll rise up, and whatever it is, we'll go through the blessings in a minute. And he sends him away. Esau this. Okay, this is number 2, that he deceived him. The first time is with the lentil soup. Okay, he didn't care so much about the birthright. But now the blessings to come and undermine me and to deceive your dad and all of that stuff. Esau says, I'm going to wait. Revenge is best served cold. Remember, if you want to get back at somebody, do not get back at them at the moment of anger. Like if someone trips you now while you're walking through the JCC, don't start the fight right now. It's never going to work out for you. Wait. There'll come a good opportunity when they'll walk in the room, we'll put a bucket of ice on top, and they'll open the door to ice. Because revenge, did that film? That from Vezmir. Okay. I didn't mean it. Okay? That is revenge is best cold served. Is served cold. Is best cold served. Revenge is best served cold.
There you go.
There you go. Okay? So Esau says to himself, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to do anything to him. When my father, he's an old man, dies, you see, he cared about his father. When he dies, I'm going to take care of this guy. Okay? 2 times he did this to me. 2 times he finished me off. Rebecca hears this. How does she hear it? I don't know, but a mother has intuition, and she sees Esau, and he is burning angry, and she thinks to herself, Oy Vezmir. So she calls Jacob in, and she says to Jacob, listen, Jacob, you got to get out of here, because your brother is going to kill you. Now, I'm not talking about kill you in the sense when I say to one of my kids, I'm going to kill you, which of course I'm not going to kill them. Okay? But he is actually going to kill you, so you go to my brother Lavan, go there and, get married, whatever it is, because they're not youngsters anymore at this point in time. You go there and you have to go away. And when your brother's anger subsides, you'll come back. And she tells Isaac the same thing. I don't want Jacob sticking around over here. I need him to go now to Lavan, and then that's going to be the end of the story. Isaac calls Jacob in. He gives him another blessing, and he sends him away. And goodbye. That's the end of Jacob, and we'll get to the story in a little while. And then Esau sees that his father is not happy with the women that he chose, because he chose local Canaanite women to marry. So he marries someone else from Ishmael, and then that's the end of the portion. Whew. I mean, I don't have to tell you how we have to turn ourselves inside out to justify what Jacob did. How could you do that to your brother? I mean, we talk about how many people here have siblings. Grew up with siblings. Sometimes you have a sibling rivalry. But to do this to a brother, I mean, you know what? When you know that the father wants to bless him and undermine him, just like that, when you first read it, you think to yourself, what kind of message is this? Deception is never good. Is it good to be deceiving? What happens when you deceive? It comes back to haunt you. And you know what? It's going to come back to haunt Jacob too. We'll get to that in another lesson. But now, how do we justify this? So there's a number of different ways that we could approach it. Number one is that he deserved the blessings. That's what the rabbis say. There's nothing Isaac should not have thought about giving Esav the blessings, no matter what he saw in him. Esav is not going to be the fellow that's going to carry out the covenant. It's going to be Jacob who's going to carry the covenant. He deserved the blessing, and it was rightfully his. And Isaac did not know that he was the firstborn. He bought it from Esav. So you know what? It should have gone to Jacob. And no matter what, the blessings needed to come to him. And if this is the way he has to get the blessings, so be it. You know what? Sometimes the ends justify the means. And in this case, we say yes. To get the blessings, you want to fool around with your deception a little bit. Fine. In the Talmud it tells us that there are under certain circumstances you can lie. You can give a little lie. Like when? Like for example, shalom bayis, to keep peace in the home. You're allowed to say like Aaron, Moses' brother, he was a master at this. You know, like if two people were fighting, he would come to one and say, hey, you know what? Your partner that's so angry, he came to me last night and he said to me he would really like to make up. It's not true. He didn't. But he would tell this to each partner, and then he would get them in the room and try and make peace. So the little white lie when it comes to shalom bayis, the peace, it's okay to do that because no harm, no foul. So okay, you say the same thing over here. You know what? He fooled his father, but it was on Rebecca's shoulders. He deserved the blessings anyways. Isaac, at the end of the day, he probably knew that it was Jacob. How could you not know through a voice? He wasn't deaf. He may have been blind, but you can't disguise your voice. He knew that it was Jacob, and nonetheless he gave it to Jacob, and so be it. Others say no. Rebecca was wrong in this particular case. She should have let it play it out, and who knows what would have happened. If this is what Isaac wanted, she should have let it play out, because there are two separate types of blessings. Now let's get into the blessings itself. What Isaac says to him. Okay? Because it's very interesting. We're going to go to page 136. Okay? 138. 138. Okay? He says like this. Vayigash, we'll take it from the top of the page, verse number 27. Vayigash, Jacob drew closer. Vayishat lo, he kissed him. Vayorech es reich begodov, he smelt the fragrance of his garments. Vayiracheyu, and he blessed him. Vayomer, and Isaac said, Re'ei reich beni kereich sodeh, I smell the fragrance of my son is like the fragrance of a field. Asher berchi Hashem, which God has blessed. And here's the blessing that he gives him. Vayitin l'cha Elokim, may God give to you mitala shamayim, from the dew that comes from heaven. Meaning that, you know, what's dew good for? Your crops. Umishmani oretz, and from the fatness of the earth. V'roiv dogan v'tirosh, abundant grain and wine. Yavdechu amin, may people serve you. V'yishtachvu l'cha le'umim, and regimes will prostrate themselves to you. Have a gvir la'achecha, you should be a lord to your kinsmen. And may your mother's sons prostrate to you. Those who curse you shall be cursed. And those who bless you shall be blessed. That's the blessing he gives to Jacob, his initial blessing. So what does he bless him with? The fatness of the earth and the dew of the heaven, and you should be a lord over other people. Okay? Think about this for a second. This blessing, this blessing is primarily what type of a blessing? Very, very physical. I mean, it's materialistic, right? Because what are really here, the crux of this blessing? You should be successful in your endeavors. The Midrashmani Aretz, the fatness of the earth, when you plant grain, or hopefully a wind will not come and wipe it out. There shouldn't be a drought. You should always have an abundance of food and an abundance of goods. Everything here is geared towards materialism. Everything. You should be a lord over other people, you know, until the end. Baruch, and everybody that blesses you and everybody that curses you, that's it. So the blessings that Isaac had intended to give to Esav were of what kind of basis? Materialism. Completely materialism. This is what he wanted to give to Esav. Now Jacob got it. Okay, Esav comes back to his father and he says to his father, Dad, give me a blessing. And I told you before, Isaac says, "Oh, I'm sorry, your brother came and took him." But he said, "No, you got to be another one." He says, "Okay." He says this. So we go to verse number 39 on page 141. So Isaac, his father, answered him because he says, "Bless me too, father." And he said to him, "Behold, of the fatness of the earth shall be your dwelling, and of the dew of the heavens from above." Well, did we hear that? Where did we hear that? We just heard that before when he gave to whom? To Jacob. So he gave Esau the very same blessing that he gave to Jacob. That from the fatness of the land you shall get, and you shall have from the dew in the heaven. And here goes a little different. Here's where he veers off. By your sword you shall live. Okay? This is for Esau. But your brother you shall serve. Meaning, because I gave the blessings to Jacob, you're going to serve your brother. Yet it shall be, when you are aggrieved, when your brother doesn't do the right thing to you and doesn't treat you correctly, you may cast off his yoke from your neck. So it doesn't have to be a permanent situation that you're going to play second fiddle. But when your brother forgets how to play first fiddle, you're going to sit down in his place. You'll be the first violinist when your brother. So it's interesting. Because the first part of the blessing is exactly the same as he gave to Jacob, which is an abundance of materialism. Because that's what you want. This is what you're going to get. But you should know that because your brother came in, your brother is going to be on top, but doesn't always have that. Always does not going to stay, because nothing stays the same ever. When he falters and he doesn't pay attention, you're going to leap over him, and you're going to be the one that's going to be on top. Very interesting. Very interesting. Same blessing, except to Jacob he doesn't give this caveat that you're going to be the second fiddle. To Esau he does, but it doesn't matter, because down the line, Esau represents the nations of the world. Jacob represents the Jews. When the Jews are following what Isaac wanted, is when the Jews are following the word of God, when they're keeping the covenant, and when they're loyal, what happens? They're up, right? But when they reject the covenant, what happens? Comes along, they reject the Torah, they reject the commandments. So Esau represents Rome. Let's say, for example, Rome is Esau. Rome and Israel, once upon a time, Israel was on top. Then came along Rome, and what did Rome do to Israel? Israel faltered. Rome came in, conquered Israel, and exiled Israel. When is Israel going to get back on top? It's been 2,000 years now that we've been playing second fiddle to Rome. When Mashiach comes. Mashiach comes, then we'll be back number one, and then Rome will be number two. But until that time, this is the way it is. Okay? So that's the two blessings. The two blessings. So Isaac gave to the Esau. This is why the commentaries that say that Rebekah faltered and made a mistake in the blessings, because this is not what Jacob wanted, and this is not what Jacob needed. This is what Isaac wanted to give the materialistic blessings to Esau. Now Jacob comes along and takes the blessings. Okay, so he gave the same blessing to Esau with the caveat that eventually, don't worry, you know what, your brother's going to falter. If your brother falters, it's a matter of when he's going to falter, and then you'll be on top. You don't have to worry. Now let's go to blessing number 3. Because remember, Rebekah then tells Jacob, you better get out of here because your brother is so angry he's going to kill you. He goes to his father, and his father says to him, I want you to go to Lavan, and I want you to marry a woman from Lavan's place over there, because the women over here are no good. You know, remember the whole, we talked about this last week. Now listen to what he says here. We're going to go now to 143, verse number 3. And this is his blessing to him. Let's go back one verse. He says, do not take away from the Canaanite woman. Go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take away from the daughters of Lavan, your mother's brother. He knew that he had Rachel, that we're going to get to next week. We're going to talk about Jacob and Rachel. And then he says like this to him. Now he's going to bless him. And may El Shaddai, which is God, bless you, make you fruitful and make you numerous, and may you be a congregation of peoples. May he grant you the blessing of Abraham to you, to do to your offspring, to you and to your offspring with you, that you may possess the land of your sojourn, which God gave to Abraham. Now, what's the difference there in the blessing from the first blessing? The first part of it, he blesses him with children. This is what Abraham wanted, the covenant. To bless him with numerous children, to become a nation. It doesn't talk about fatness of the earth. It doesn't talk about the dew of the sky. It talks about a family. That now you got to go, Jacob, and you have to create a family. This is something much more spiritual and less materialistic. Because to raise a good family, you have to imbue them with good values. Wealth is not going to help you. Okay, it'll help you get them maybe into good colleges. But what you have to do is you have to work hard into getting them to do the right thing. And you have to work hard at being a good parent. And God should bless you that these things, these spiritual things should come to you. And then he says to him, I want you to know that I want you to possess this land. Now what's so special about the land of Canaan? Why he gives to Jacob the land of Canaan? Because this is the holy land. This is going to be the land that God is later on going to promise to whom? To Moses. Moses, you're going to lead the people to the promised land. What's the promised land? The promised land, I'm sorry to say, is not California. It's a wonderful land. Don't get me wrong. The weather is good. It's nice, very nice. We have the ocean, we have the mountains, we got the weather, but it's not the promised land. Where is the promised land? The land of Israel. That's the promised land. And what makes the land of Israel special? Because of its topography? Because it's situated near the Mediterranean? No, because it's blessed with an inherent holiness to it. It's Eretz HaKdosha. It's the holy land where Adam was created from there. Abraham brought Isaac as a sacrifice up there. Every day Jacob prayed over there. It is the land of our forefathers. It is the holy land. So the second set of blessings that Isaac gives to Jacob is not materialistic in nature. It's all about the spiritual life that you need to lead. If you're going to take the covenant and you came in there to get the blessings and you say to yourself that I am the rightful owner of the birthright, you're going to have to prove it. And how are you going to prove it? You're going to prove it by creating a nation that's going to be loyal and dedicated to the words and the ways of myself and my father Abraham and our mothers. So we see here, so the commentaries that say, why did she have to take the blessings from Esau? Esau got the blessing of materialism. Jacob was going to get the blessings of spiritualism. And everybody can live happily after. He's going to be the rich guy. Jacob is going to be the fine guy. And everybody will be happy. So that's one way of looking at it. See, Isaac had two blessings in his pocket. He gave one to you and he gave one to you. Have a wonderful day. Go your separate ways. But it seems that from the Torah's point of view, that Jacob wanted and needed both blessings. Both the material blessings and the spiritual blessings. And that's what he ended up getting if what? He stays loyal. If you don't stay loyal, like he said to Esau, if your brother falters and trips and you turn your back on this covenant, then all bets are off. The blessings are off. But if you stay loyal and you do the right thing, then both blessings come together. I mean, imagine that. You have an abundance of goods where you don't have to worry. Like in Solomon's days, when Solomon was king, the Torah tells us, each tachas gafnei, each tachas teinosei. Everybody had a fig tree, and everybody had a date tree, and everybody had a piece of land, and everybody was happy, and Solomon was strong, and the nation was at peace. It was a glorious time for the Jewish people when Solomon was king. He was world renowned. Everybody knew the wisdom of Solomon, and everybody. I can't even begin to tell you what it was like. You read in the history of the Jewish people when Solomon was there, and that was the best of times because we had an abundance of goods, materially, but we were also loyal spiritually. Because what happened in the time of Solomon? We built what? The temple. The first temple was built in the days of Solomon, and we worshipped in the temple. We did what was right in the temple. We were great. Then Solomon dies and things fall apart afterwards. That's when we falter. When we falter, then God says, okay, what do you want from me? So read the prophets and see that when the Jews turn away from God, what does God do? He takes a left turn. And when God takes a left turn and he takes away our protection, it's done. So this was the story with the blessings. So there's a number of different ways you can look at it. That's why I love studying Torah. Because Shivim Panim LaTorah, there's 70 faces to the Torah. Some are true, some are not true. And let's be honest. Maimonides says something, I buy it. Some contemporary guys say, okay, maybe yeah, maybe nish. Who knows? But the greatness is a fachba the koleba. Go over it and go over it, because everything is inside of this. I'm telling you, everything that's familiar now. I talk about giving a class on relationships. Look at that. Now, don't take parenting advice from here. Okay? It's not good when the father loves one and the mother loves the other. It's no good to show favoritism to your children. You got to treat everyone the same. Now, it's sometimes not easy, because there are going to be, like I mentioned, some kids which are going to be so wonderful, and there's going to be some kids that are going to give you a bigger challenge. But that shouldn't affect you. If you're a parent, you got to be consistent, right? Not show favoritism to one, yeah, and then to the other one, never show any love. If you do that, guess what happens? You're gonna sow contention in your family. You got to treat everybody the same. It's not easy, but that's the way parenting works. Parenting is hard. There's only a few minutes left, and I want to just mention one medrash. Medrash is the oral tradition of the Torah. The Torah that we study here in the book is called the written tradition, the Torah Shebiksav. But there's a whole world out there called the oral tradition, called the oral Torah. It's comprised of the Mishnah, which we did the Perkei Avos, the ethics of our sages. That's part of the oral tradition. The Talmud, Medrash, Kabbalah, all of this is the oral tradition. Came later on. The oral tradition has. I mentioned this in a sermon a few weeks ago. So if you were in Shul that week, I apologize. But it's such a beautiful thought. It says, when we go back to page 139, and it says that Jacob drew close to Isaac. Isaac embraced him, and he smelled the fragrance of his garments, and he blessed him. The commentator said, he smelled. Have you ever smelled goat skin? Goat skin stinks. Okay? Have you ever been to a tannery where they tan? It smells to high heaven. Okay? My father was in the meat business, and so when I was a little kid, I used to go to him to work. When they slaughter those animals and they rip them to pieces and they hang them up there like a shchita. Oh, I mean, it smells horrible. And tanning leather, it stinks. So, what do you mean? So here, the guy has goat skin all over him. The guy smells like he didn't take a shower in 7 weeks. You know, Jacob should have held his nose, but he didn't. What does it say? He smelled the fragrance of his garments and blessed him. Why? So the Medrash says that you could look at the word for clothing in Hebrew is beged. Beged is clothing. Begodov is his clothing. But if you take the same word, you can read it boiged. Boiged means a traitor. A traitor. Now if you read that word, you say like this, Vayarech is reich begodov. He smelled the fragrance of Jacob's traitors, and he blessed them. So the Medrash says, what do you mean? He smelled the fragrance of his traitors. So they tell the story of Yesi Mishisai. There was a fellow, his name was Yesi, and he came from a town called Shisai. He lived at the time of the Romans. The Romans in the year 70 conquered Jerusalem, and they were standing at the doorway of the temple, but they were afraid to go into the temple because they heard that heebie-jeebies. You don't walk into the temple, it's a holy house. People walk in the temple, terrible things happen. So they said they're going to get a Jew that's going to go into the temple. Who wants to go into the temple? People, they made an announcement. Anybody that goes into the temple could take whatever they want. So there was this guy, Yesi. He wasn't a religious guy. He scoffed. He was already a secular Jew. And he said to himself, I'm going to go in. He went in, which is not allowed because only the priest and the high priest could go in. So he was not allowed to go into the temple. And he came out with a gold menorah. There was a big gold menorah that was in there, and he schlepped it out. So the Romans looked at him, they said, really? That's what you're going to take, a gold menorah? You can't even use a gold menorah. Why don't you go back in and get something that's practical? So all of a sudden, some spirit of holiness came rested on this man's shoulders. And he said to the Romans, you know what? I did it once. I transgressed. I made God angry. I'm not doing it again. No, but the Romans said, come on, Yesi, come on, you can do it again. You're not even religious. What are you doing? Come on, go in. And all he kept saying is, I'm not doing it again. That's it. I did it once. I angered God. I'm not doing it again. So the Romans said to him, you know what? I'll tell you what. If you go in again, because what's the worst thing they can threaten you here in America with? Incarceration? No. I'll tell you the worst 3 letters in the English language here in America. IRS. Okay? All they need to do is get those guys on your tuchus. Okay? Because that's if you want to have a miserable life, you need to get the IRS on your tuchus. They never lose anything. They never lose a piece of paper. They never lose your number. They'll hound you forever. And interest and penalties incur, right? And keeps compounding and compounding. So they said to him, you know what? If you go in, we're going to give you 3 years worth of taxes. Okay? See, taxation always was the first way how to get you. So he said to them, I don't care how many years you give me, I'm not going in. But now became a struggle of wills. They wanted him in, he doesn't want to go in. Finally, they said, if you don't go in, we're going to kill you. He said, I don't care. And the Medrash tells us that they tied him to 2 oxen on separate paths, and they tore him apart. He died over there. I don't want to get too graphic, even though already it's too graphic, but I want to get too graphic. Here is what Yitzchak was smelling. Yesi was a boygid. Yesi, we call he's a traitor. Because he went into the, but when it came down again to the bottom line, he would not transgress anymore. And Isaac smelled the fragrance of the traitors. Even the sinners of Israel have within themselves a plethora of goodness to them. And this is what Isaac smelled. Isaac smelled, even the worst person has within in themselves a wonderful, what we call pintalayid. That's Ladino for you. No? A pintalayid is they have a spark of Hashem inside a heart. No matter how far you roam, you could look for love like Jews love to do. Look for love in all the wrong places. We'll be Jewish, we'll look for Buddhism, Shmitism, capitalism, communism. We'll look for anything except for Judaism. But you know what? Deep down in our hearts, there's that little spark that never leaves us. And that's what Isaac was smelling. Isaac saw in the future, even the sinners of Israel, they have this wonderful fragrance to them. And what did he do? Vayivracheyu, and he blessed Jacob. That's how we need to look at people. Because a lot of us look at people and they say, what kind of a person is that? No good Nick. No. Don't look at the no good Nick. Okay? Look at the good Nick within the no good Nick. Okay? That's how you have to look at people. You've got to look at the good part. The Rebbe, the Lubavitch Rebbe, always was a master at this. Someone came to him and said to him, there's a statement in the Talmud that says that even the sinners of Israel are full of mitzvahs. The sinners of Israel are full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate, the seeds in a pomegranate. So someone said to the Rebbe, oh, look at these. Even a guy that has so many mitzvahs, they're still a sinner. So the Rebbe said, how could the Talmud call them a sinner with so many mitzvahs? They're not. So, it's how you look at an individual. You could look at the sinner part of them and say, look at this, a sinner, and expel them. Or you could say to yourself, you know what? Everybody has a piece of goodness within them. And like I mentioned before about Isaac, our job is first, if you want to get the best out of them, how do you have to treat them? With love and care and compassion. You want to rebuke somebody, you got to make sure that your home is clean and free of any type of pesticides before you spur onto somebody and to criticize them. And that's the lesson, how we have to live. Because too many times we write people off, we call them sinners, they're not like us, they're not with us. That's not the way, not the Jewish way. The Jewish way has always been look with the right eye. Look with the right eye. If you look with the right eye, which has always been the right eye, represents the goodness within us. Look at the goodness within a person. If you could find the goodness within a person, we'll all get along. If we don't, then you see what happens to the world. You see what's happening in the world. No one can get along with each other because everybody is split apart. That's not the way to do it. The way to do it is through love and compassion and caring and listening to somebody else and having all those values. And that was, I believe, the blessing that Isaac gave to Jacob, the spiritual blessing that he passed on to his 12 sons, which we'll get to next week. All right? Okay. Now, thank you, Marcy, for doing that. Again, I'm going to have these brochures so anybody would like one. Again, it just kills me every time we make the same mistake. January 7th is not the date. That's my wife's birthday. I would never give a class on my wife's birthday. Okay? So if anybody wants to join us, I'll give them a brochure
Okay,
here.
good.
You can take one, and then we'll go from there. Till next week, everyone have a wonderful week. And remember, the most important thing is not the study, but the practice. So let's get out there and make this world a better place. All right? All right.